Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are right now. We're going to leave a couple of minutes just to let folks trickle in. I see a lot of folks joining already. That's great to see. In the meantime, I'm Chiara. In case you haven't joined one of our webinars before, I'm with Tonic, and we have Mark from Mockaroo on the line with us today, and Adam as well, also from Tonic.
Hey, everyone.
If you'd like to let us know where you're chiming in from, feel free to do so in the chat or just say hello. Love to see that. Make sure my chat's set to, I'm in the Bay Area where it is chillier than anticipated, but I always feel like a wuss if I'm like, oh, it's so cold, because it's definitely not cold.
First world problems there.
Oh my goodness, the Bay Area, yeah. Oh, we got someone from Argentina, awesome.
Wow.
Several from Austin, Texas. South Africa.
South Africa, they're the furthest away, I think.
I wonder South Africa, is that on like Central European time, Western European time? It's one of those places that's so close but yet so far away, time zone wise.
Yeah. London, Nepal, Mexico. Wow, such an international crowd. That's awesome. And I really appreciate people joining, you know, at all hours of their days.
Yeah, Nepal, what? It's getting pretty late there.
Ass country. Awesome.
Wow.
That's so cool. That really speaks to the Mockaroo, like just the international fan base
Mark,
of Mockaroo.
Belgium, yeah.
Mark, you got some international fans.
No,
a lot of them, actually.
I actually get more traffic from India than anywhere else. Which is nice because Edgio launched some pops in India for me earlier this year. So now they get actually like reasonably good response times too.
Oh, nice.
Very cool. Well, let's see. Looks like we have a great turnout already. If you're both ready, we can kick things off. Got a lot to cover today, so. Sounds good. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's event on the untapped potential of synthetic data for data scientists with Mockaroo and Tonic.ai. My name is Chiara. I'm the product marketing manager at Tonic.ai, and as always, I am very happy to be joined by our speakers today. We have Mark Brocato, the founder and CTO of Mockaroo, calling in live from Europe, and Adam Kamor, co-founder and head of engineering at Tonic.ai, joining us from the East Coast of the States. How are you both doing today?
Doing wonderful.
Doing great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And if you in the audience have joined us before, you may know that we've covered a range of topics at these events, from the architecture of data generation to scaling data for the enterprise. All of those talks are available on Tonic's YouTube channel if you want to go check them out later on. And along the way, we fielded a ton of great questions from the audience, many of which have veered the conversation into the topic of the hour, which is why we chose to dedicate an entire event to it, namely data synthesis for data science. We're excited to deep dive this use case for you today and how both Tonic and Mockaroo solve for it in their respective distinct ways. We're going to share a few slides, we'll do a demo, and along the way, we would love to hear your questions. Please chime in at any time. You can put your questions in the Q&A, you can put them in the chat. I'll look out for them and I'll ask them as they come up. All right, with that, I will let Mark take the stage to share all the latest from Mockaroo.
All right, thank you. Share my screen here. Okay, so many of you may know Mockaroo. If you don't, I'll give you a little quick overview. Mockaroo is a very simple but surprisingly sophisticated web application that helps you generate synthetic, fake, but very realistic looking data, primarily for software development, testing, and demoing of software, or pre-sales. A quick overview. Mockaroo has a ton of pre-built data types to help you design synthetic data sets from scratch. You can export your data in CSV, JSON, XML, Excel, some IoT formats, various other more niche formats like Cassandra SQL, MongoDB, et cetera. So a lot of different export formats. And you can also use it to build your own mock APIs. So for example, if you're a software developer working on a client side of an application, and the darn team that's supposed to work on the server side doesn't have their APIs ready yet, you can just mock them and hook your front end up to a Mockaroo's mock backend. so that you can continue to work, kind of unblock yourself, so to speak. It has both a very simple and intuitive UI that you use in the browser, as well as an API that allows you to basically automate whatever you could do in the browser. It's very simple to get started. I'm very proud to say it's probably one of the few web apps out there that doesn't have like a markety landing page. It just, you land on it and you can use it in the first page. And you don't need to sign up for anything. You don't need to pay for anything. It's free to start and literally requires very little investment to get something out of it. There are paid plans that allow you to generate more data. It scales quite well. Millions, if not, more records if you buy the on-prem version. And you can sign up for free to save your work and build more sophisticated interrelated data sets. Totally free. So the goal with Mockaroo, well, I could say it's a goal. It was really just the reality of starting. It started out as a very, very simple app that did a little bit, but did it pretty well. And the normal like user interaction with it might take like a minute or two. But I've built onto it over many years to where it can do a lot of very powerful things. And I'm quite proud of the fact that like you can use it in a few minutes and you can learn about its depth over the course of many days of interacting with it. So it has a nice, not too steep learning curve to it. So a little bit of an overview. When you land on Mockaroo.com, you're greeted with the default schema. A schema is like a recipe for generating data. So it has a few columns. The first one is the field name. The second is the data type. And if you click on the data type selector, you'll see a pop-up with all 130 or something built-in data types. How often you want to generate blank values. And then a thing that I call an inline formula that allows you to tweak the output of a column. So if that column is almost like what you want, but you want something slightly different, you can use inline formulas to kind of correct it or tweak it. The number of rows you want to generate, and the output format. So let's talk about some of the data types that might be useful for data sciences or applications kind of in the data science domain, whether you're doing analytics or something that finds trends. Mockaroo has quite a few data types that might help you express the type of data that would either help you develop a more meaningful demo or help you get unblocked when developing like a user interface or even a design. So there's a number of different types of numeric distributions. There's geometric distribution, binomial distribution, exponential distribution, Poisson, and normal distribution. So all those are built in. You can fill in the probabilities, the means, and they'll generate numbers based on those distributions. There's also a more customizable distribution called a scenario. Scenario is basically a way for you to simulate a trend numerically. So the idea is that based on other values in your schema, you customize the numeric distribution for each of those values. So here's like a really common case. Let's say you wanted to model like fuel prices over the course of the year. There might be a trend where in the summer, gas price hits its peak, and then in the spring and fall, it's kind of lowest. And so you could design a scenario where you say for each month, assuming you had month as one of the columns in your data set, the gas price would be generated as a normal distribution where the mean is a specific value for each month, and same with standard deviation. There also is the ability to change that to a Poisson distribution as well. So scenarios basically allow you to kind of fake trends in your application. One of the first uses for this actually was the Salesforce Wave platform. When Salesforce was building that platform, they built out a lot of the demo data sets on Mockaroo. That platform is essentially a big data platform that aims to reveal trends in sales data. And so they wanted to kind of fake a trend and then have the platform, air quotes, find that trend within the data. So they use this tool to do that. Data sets allow you to upload your own data in CSV files into Mockaroo. So you don't have to generate everything from scratch. If you have data that you want to reference in your schemas in Mockaroo, you can do that by creating a data set. And then you can reference your own data in your schemas. So that's how you create referential integrity to databases that you already have. Or you can also generate and reference the data entirely within Mockaroo. So you can build relational integrity by first creating a schema for a primary key table and then creating your schema for your foreign key table and pulling in values from your primary key data set that you generated within Mockaroo. So you get this kind of ability to build out related databases. With any data set, you can also customize the distribution by which values are picked from that data set when generating your synthetic data. So for example, here I have a schema with 2 columns, a binary gender column, and then a color column that is pulled from a simple data set of colors that I uploaded. In order to reference a data set you uploaded, you pick the data set column type, and it has a distribution selection. So the default is random. It'll just randomly pick rows from that distribution as it's going through and generating your new data. But you can change that to a custom distribution. And when you do that, this little graph button appears. And if you click that, you can do a similar thing that you would do with scenarios, which is basically you can say, given some expression, which is typically like, given that the value of some other column is a certain value, here are the relative frequencies by which to generate the discrete values coming from this colors distribution. So in this case, I'm saying for male, green is the most popular, followed by blue and red, and then it reverses that trend with specific distributions for female. So again, this is the way that you bake in trends in categorical data instead of numeric data. Okay, last but not least is formulas. Formulas are probably the thing that makes Mockaroo the most flexible. So I think most users that use Mockaroo in a kind of serious capacity get very deep into using formulas. Basically, the idea behind formulas is they allow you to generate values based on other values using the formula data type. So, for example, if I had 2 columns, mass and acceleration, that are numeric, I could derive force from mass and acceleration using a formula column. The formula syntax is just based on Ruby, so it's fairly simple. There's some nice built-in help. There's a few really helpful functions built in as well that you can call. But basically the idea is you can sort of compute anything either based on randomness or based on other columns in your data set. There's also a variant of formulas that I call inline formulas, which is this little sigma button at the end of a column. And so that allows you to tweak the value of any field. So sometimes you might have a field that is mostly right, but you need to tweak it in some way. So maybe it starts at 0, but you actually need to start it at 1. This is probably the simplest formula you could possibly imagine that adds 1 to the outcoming value of this field. Another common one is you're using company name, but you want lowercase company names. Well, you can just use the downcase method in Ruby to transform that data. So it kind of gets you out of some sticky situations in formatting the data in exactly the way that you want if the built-in way doesn't work for you. So those are some of the more kind of powerful aspects of Mockaroo, how you can work with numeric data, how you can simulate trends, how you can correlate fields. That's really the way in which Mockaroo helps produce data sets for applications kind of in the data science field. So with that, I'll hand it over to Adam. Really excited to see what you guys have done with this new gin thing that you've cooked up. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah.
As soon as I can find the stop share button. There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. I'm just going to jump in to say I knew about like CSV upload, but I hadn't heard you talk about it in the context of maintaining referential integrity and things like that. That's pretty cool to hear. Every time we do an event, I learn more about Mockaroo and the depth of what you created there. It's very cool.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a demo in at least, it's probably been a year since you and I had done a webinar together. Yeah, I mean, it looks, as always, looks great. Definitely some new features there. It's like when you haven't seen someone's kids in a year and you like, oh my God, they've grown. But when you're the parent, you don't really realize it because they grow a little every day.
Yeah.
That's great. Hi, everyone. My name is Adam. I'm the co-founder and head of engineering at Tonic.ai. For those that don't know us, go check us out at Tonic.ai. We're the fake data company. We help customers generate synthetic or fake or de-identified, whatever you want to call it, data. There's a general theme that exists like for Tonic and Mockaroo, is that Mockaroo, in general, I mean, there's exceptions to this on both sides. Mockaroo generates data from scratch. You don't have any data, use Mockaroo. You can create data really at any like granularity and resolution and quality you want, just based on the rules that you provide the system. In general, the tools that Tonic provides operate a bit differently. Tonic operates by taking a seed data set. It could be an entire application database. It could be a single table. It could be a SQL view. It could be a CSV file, what have you. And then we will generate synthetic data on top of the seed that you provide. So instead of specifying, the rules that you want, we actually just look at the data, find the relationships in the data, and then preserve those relationships, giving you additional rows of data. And we call that, sometimes, like depending on the use case and exactly how you're using the tool, it could be a de-identified application database that you want to use in your lower environments for application testing and development, right? Like you have a production database, it's sensitive. You de-identify it, you can put it into your staging environment, and now everyone can access it and test against it, and you get high-quality production data. The other use case is for data scientists and data analysts that want to analyze data, but there could be one of two issues. Issue one is the data is very private, and they need a synthetic version of that data that gives them some form of privacy because perhaps they can't access the actual user data. Situation two could be that you have some data, but you need more. So for example, let's say I'm doing a churn analysis on a data set. I'm trying to understand which of my customers are going to churn next year. And to do that, I'm going to train a machine learning model that's going to look at past churn data. Like, you feed into this model as training, okay, these are customers that didn't churn. These are customers that churned. Here's their properties. Give it a new customer that you've never seen before. Tell me if they're going to churn or not. Well, those types of classification algorithms don't perform very well in general with super unbalanced data sets. You'll have far more users who don't churn than churn, hopefully, right? So you can use synthetic data to augment or to rebalance your data sets to improve the quality of the models that you're training. Can I get a quick idea in the comments? I'd be really curious to know, like, the folks on this call, what are their roles at their organizations and what are they interested in? Could folks, if anyone interested, you don't have to do it. If you're a data scientist or a data analyst, could you kind of say something in the chat? Maybe just give a +1, for example. I want to get a sense of who the audience here is today. Don't be shy. Okay, so data engineer, great. I see a +1 for a data scientist. Oh, fun, auditing lecturer. Data analyst, part looking at tabular data, data analyst. Great, okay. Software developer, okay. So I see Roberto, you're a software developer. Our other offering, which we've given demos and webinars for before, which is for generating de-identified application databases. It's maybe more up your alley, but please stick around. Hopefully you'll learn something. Great, so I think the data analyst, the data scientist in the call, I think you're going to really enjoy this demo. Let's get into it. Share. All right, Chiara, can you see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Great. Okay, you can see Jen, yeah?
Yep.
All right, nice. Okay, good. Okay, so I've already logged into Jen. For anyone that wants to go create an account, you can absolutely go do that. Jen.tonic.ai. In fact, I'm going to do it right here. Go here, Jen, DJINN.tonic.ai, create account. Bam, go create an account if you're so interested. You'll be able to follow along today, which might be fun for you.
I popped the link in the chat as well.
And the link's in the chat. Thank you, Chiara. So let me kind of give a background on exactly what we're doing here. So I've already connected to a data source, because remember, in Tonic products, you typically start by pointing our product at a piece of data. And we're going to look at that data and we're going to do something with it. That's the seed data. So today, our seed data exists in a Postgres database. And it's called Check Banking. This is an open source database, or data set released by a Czechoslovakian bank in the late 90s, early 2000s. You can find the data set on data.world. And that's what we're going to be using today, kind of pretending that it's our real data set. Okay. So that's what we're connected to. Let's now start by creating a model. You can see here immediately, this is what your database looks like. It's got a schema called public, and it's got a bunch of tables. Okay, cool. It's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tables. Well, we can start kind of poking around in the data a little bit, right? I could, for example, do select star from account. Okay, that gives me all my account data. That might be interesting. It also might not be that interesting. So for example, I can see that there's already some foreign keys that are of interest to me. The account table has a district ID. So I could do select star from account A, join district D on A dot district ID equals D dot district ID, right? And then I could do something like A dot star, but at the beginning, I want to put D dot district name. Hopefully that's valid SQL. It is. Good. Okay. So, I can start joining tables together. I can construct very complex queries. Really, any valid SQL query is going to work here. If it's a valid Postgres query, it'll work. So I get a table of data. And now the goal here is to take this table of data and train a machine learning model on it, which will give to you a way to generate an arbitrary number of rows of synthetic data that are going to look just like the real data. Like they're going to have the same relationships between columns. They'll maintain inter-row dependencies if those exist in the data set, etc. You can then take this model, which generates the synthetic data, and you can use that synthetic data downstream wherever you like. And again, there's typically 2 use cases we see. One is the privacy use case. The second is augmenting existing data sources to improve machine learning models. So this is kind of a little silly query. Like I was just kind of using it to demonstrate. Let me show you a better query. I'm going to start training it now so I can show you what that does in a few minutes. So I've already created this model here called accounts. Let's click on it. Let's go to edit the model. This query is a lot more complicated. It's a join across many tables. There's a bunch of aggregates and filters and group bys, all that stuff. But it gives me this data set here. This data set gives me 1 row per account at the bank. And I could use this data set, for example, to train a model that's going to tell me who should receive a new credit card offer from the bank. Right? Like maybe I'm a data scientist at this bank or a data analyst, and I'm trying to determine, well, who should we send a new credit card offer to? Now, sending a credit card offer is expensive, right? You don't send it to everyone. Like, you get these things in the mail. It comes on like nice paper, or it's printed. It might have like a little fake credit card in there. Like that costs money to send. So I only want to send it to people that I think are likely to say yes to my offer. Well, here's my data set that tells me who in the past has accepted a credit card offer, and it has various attributes related to their accounts. So I'm going to train a classification model. It could be a logistic regression. It could be XGBoost, whatever, that's going to tell me who should get a new credit card offer and who shouldn't. This is my training data set, right? I'm going to feed that training data set into Gin. Gin is going to train a model, and that model is going to give me synthetic rows of data. I can take those synthetic rows of data. I can then feed it into the actual logistic regression or XGBoost model that I care about for making decisions. And it's going to improve the results. And I'm going to show you how all of that works. So I defined my query, looking good so far. Real quick, I'll point this out now. I can go over here and change model parameters. These are basically telling Gin how to train the model. The number of epochs is how long to train for. We can stop early under certain conditions to save you time if things are or are not converging. We can change our max categorical dimension, which kind of can help you reduce or increase the dimensionality of the space. Depending on, on the quality results you need, etc. So I have this, let's close it. I have this model running now. it has 192 steps done, and it's got about 100 steps to go because we set it for 300 epochs. We're going to let this finish over the next 30 seconds or so. While that's happening, once the model's trained, how do we use it, right? Like we want to be able to invoke that model to actually generate synthetic rows of data, of course. So let's do that. Let's go to export. First, you got to install these libraries, Tonic API and Tonic reporting. These are available on PyPy. Anyone here familiar with Python will understand that pip install command. So you go install those, no problem. You then go here, and all you got to do is this. You're going to copy this code snippet into your Jupyter notebook or into your Python program. It's just normal Python code. I'll walk you through it very quickly, even though it's relatively straightforward. Here, you're defining a Tonic object. You need to point us at the Tonic server, in this case, or the Gin server, gin.tonic.ai. You need to provide an API token. I'll show you how to do that momentarily. This workspace is the GUID for the workspace that we're in. This is just kind of, it's part of the template. It's filled out for you. You don't have to worry about it. And here's where we get our model. If I train different models, obviously these GUIDs will change. So as we're adjusting model parameters, adjusting our query, you might be changing this GUID to get different models. And then you call model.sample. I'm calling it here, model.sample of 100. That will return 100 rows of synthetic data directly into a pandas data frame, which you can then use in the rest of your Jupyter notebook. You might, for example, generate a couple 100,000 rows of this data and then do some rejection sampling saying, well, let's only keep the rows where the customer currently accepted a credit card or has previously accepted a credit card offer. I can then take those, synthetic rows, augment them into my existing data, perhaps to balance the data set for, people that have and have not accepted offers. And then you'll see that you can get a better logistic regression. That's one example. All right. Very briefly, to make an API token, click right there. You go to user settings. All right. This model has finished training. Let's take a look at it. Synthesis report. So when we finish training a model, we want to help you answer two questions right off the bat without you having to do a lot of work. One is, what's the data look like? Does the data pass the sniff test? Not necessarily, is this data perfect for what I need, but more like, is this data obviously not good? That's what we're trying to answer with these graphs. We additionally have some metrics in here that talk about the privacy of the data set. For a lot of use cases, when you're talking about synthetic data, especially when that synthetic data is based off seed data, you care about what the privacy is. Like, just because you're synthesizing data does not guarantee that your data is private and secure and not betraying your users' data and information, right? So we try to help you answer those questions. So let's talk about data quality first. In these graphs, in purple, we're seeing real data. In turquoise, we're seeing the synthetic data. We first show you all of our categorical columns. These are columns that typically have text labels in them, is maybe a good way to describe it, right? District ID was one. Has credit card true or false is another. Has loan true or false is another good example. And what we're looking for is similar heights between the purple and blue bars. So for has credit card, there's about 3,500 people that don't have a credit card in the source and the synthetic data sets, and about 1,000 that do in the source and synthetic. So you can see that the synthetic data that we generate is generating, equal probabilities of has credit card compared to the source. That's a good sign. In fact, you can see that all of our categorical columns have pretty tight overlap between the real and the synthetic data. That's good news. We move into the categorical, or the continuous variables. These are typically numerical values. You can see here, these are essentially histograms of the variables. You can see really strong overlap between the purple and turquoise distributions. Again, great, we're really recreating these numerical distributions. Now, of course, these are all kind of like single variable analyses. We're not talking about, okay, well, as you vary account length, how does the account start time change, right? Like what's the, the source data has given like, R squared value. What's the R squared value in the synthetic data? So that type of like multivariate analysis is done below. This heat map is a heat map of R squared values between numerical columns. And you can see that the heat maps look very similar. It's the same color scale for real and synthetic. Another good sign. Finally, we get to privacy. And the truth is, the type of analysis we're doing above on data quality, it's a simple analysis, but it's just meant to kind of save you time. And it's something that, most of our users can do themselves. But when you start talking about privacy, it gets pretty tricky. So let me show you today what we do to kind of give you an idea about the privacy of your synthetic data. This is a distance to closest record metric. The purple distribution is the average, it's the distance from every real record to the closest other real record. So it gives you a distribution of how far real records are apart from each other. So I can make the statement, for example, well, the purple distribution, the average is around, it's right there. So the average distance between real records, I'm going to say, is about 0.1 units of distance. Now, I can say that by looking at the distribution. Cool. The turquoise distribution is the distance from every synthetic record to its closest real record. So let's say we trained our model too long or with not enough data and we started overfitting, memorizing, basically memorizing the input, right? The model then might regurgitate, original rows of source data, right? That would be like an example of overfitting. In that situation, every synthetic record would be identical to one real record. And you would have a very tall bar that's turquoise at distance 0, right? Because the model's been overfitted. We're just regurgitating the training data. That would be bad news. That's not a private synthesis algorithm right there. So you can use this graph to kind of understand, what do the synthetic data records look like relative to the real records? And with the current setup we have, our synthetic data is further on average from real records than real records are from themselves. And we know that because the turquoise distribution is shifted to the right? But I can do something. I can actually toy with this distribution. Let me show you how to do that. I can toy with the privacy of our output. Let's go to model parameters. I'm going to train for 30 epochs. So I'm gonna train for a shorter period of time. It's queued. Oh, interesting. Oh, good. It is running now. It was queued. It looks like at least some of you have created accounts and are training jobs, because it normally won't even stay queued for that long. That's great. So this will be a fast run. It'll be done, in fact, momentarily. So this time, remember, we're training our model for a lot longer. We expect the quality of the synthetic data to be worse, but we also expect there to be more privacy, because privacy and data quality, they move opposite each other. For those that can see my screen, I'm moving my hands in opposite directions. As you increase the privacy of your synthetic data, it's going to look less like the original data. That's how you make it more private. So the utility of that data goes down. If you want really high utility, it's going to look more like the source data set, so the privacy goes down. So they're always moving opposite each other. All right, let's go to that synthesis report. Cool. Okay, hey, the categorical variables don't look bad. That's good. Oh, okay. The numerical distributions, though, there's not as good of an overlap as there was before. Before, it was like nearly a perfect overlap. Now we don't have that. It's good, but it's not great. Oh, the heat maps. It's the same shape, but the scales are a bit different now, right? And here we go. The synthetic data is all of a sudden far more private because it's of less quality. So that's a good example of that trade-off. So depending on exactly what I'm trying to do, I could choose to export either of these two models straight into my Jupyter notebook, grab my data, and begin doing work. And that's the demo. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. But I hadn't seen you do that comparison before of like, let's train it for a short amount of time. Very cool to see that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I had one question come through that I wanted to ask right off the bat of you, and that is, what data sources can you connect to with Gin?
Yeah. 1 second. I'll just pull up the list. I'm no longer sharing my screen, but I'll just pull up the list sure. Myself. 1 moment. We connect to CSVs, so you can upload, CSV files. MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, SQL Server, BigQuery, and Snowflake are the data sources that we currently support. But we're constantly adding more upon user request. Yeah.
Awesome. And then the data exports, or the model exports to, like you mentioned, Jupyter Notebook, or there was also another option, I think.
Jupyter Notebook is typically where the data is exported.
Okay. Great. Well, we would love to take questions from the audience. We already had a couple come through that I'll start asking, but please, feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I'm going to jump over to the ones that I've already seen. Yeah, this question I thought was interesting. How often do you see customers needing both of your broader use cases, by which I mean using your platform to equip both developers and data scientists with synthetic data? And this is a question for both of you.
For Mockaroo, a lot of the users are developers for sure. And a lot of the users are involved in pre-sales. I actually don't know what subset of either of those are data scientists. I only really know if someone's a data scientist when I get a question that's over my head from one of the users. So I'm sure there's a ton out there. Those are definitely two very popular spaces. But I don't have exact stats. Maybe you guys have a better answer.
Chiara, the question is, how many users come for both test data and synthetic data?
How often do we see both use cases needed?
Well, we've seen it a lot more since we started offering Gin, because it's now just very clear that we do both. It's typically not the same person wanting both, but it could be the same organization that we're working with that's requesting both, and it'll just be different teams within the organization. I think that's relatively common. But no, I mean, I mean, to be clear, I think Mockaroo makes the most sense for test and sales demo data, like Mark said, as does our other product, just straight Tonic, which we're not demoing today, but for all of the software engineers and testers on the call, check it out. And then this tool is really Gin is really purpose built for data scientists and data analysts.
Yeah,
I would struggle to think of situations where software developers would need this tool in their day-to-day life.
Yep. All right, another question for you both. Can I generate synthetic text data, or is it specific only for numerical data? Maybe just covering kind of data types that both platforms service.
Right. I'm gonna interpret this question as, can Gin synthesize unstructured data? Look at a few sentences or chat logs or something like this and generate new sentences, kind of like GPT-3 or something like that. And the answer is no. We work strictly on structured data. Now, the structured data can be, it can be categorical, it can be numerical. Text is perfectly fine there, but it needs to be structured. We also don't do images, for example.
Yeah, Mockaroo has a lot of categorical text data types built in, like some very specific to domains, things like healthcare data sets, companies, product names, months, almost everything you can possibly imagine. So actually the majority of Mockaroo's data is more categorical. And I probably covered a third of the numeric types today in my slides.
Awesome. I apologize that I'm not sure if you can hear there's a lawnmower going on outside or a leaf blower.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. All right. And I was just going to quickly share a slide. I can find my share screen button. Just to show the data types serviced by Gin, like Adam mentioned, continuous data. So your numeric data, categorical data, location data, which also includes latitude and longitude, and then time and event data, by which we mean longitudinal data. So as Adam had mentioned, the row-to-row dependent data. Just wanted to share that quickly. All right, a couple more questions. On the pre-sales demo side of the world, is it safe to say that proper use Mockaroo is a high-priced, high UAT load POC's dream?
Yeah. So if by load you mean size of the data that you can generate, Mockaroo does actually scale pretty well if you can, especially if you run it on-prem. There are a lot of companies that buy the Mockaroo Enterprise and they run it on their own private cloud on many, many, many cores. It scales horizontally, and you can generate enough data to really make your developers hate you if you're a QA tester, for sure. Also demo fairly sophisticated big data platforms as well, like terabytes of data. That was actually the first commercial use case for Mockaroo. I was reached out to by a VP at Salesforce when they were building Wave, and it was to generate way more data than it could at that point. So I had to kind of scramble and put that together, but it's pretty successful, and they've been users ever since. So yeah, it is definitely, actually, it's a good point. When you say UAT, Mockaroo was originally created for QA in mind. I created it as an internal tool when I was working as a developer lead at a small life sciences startup, thinking that this would be a way to help QA personnel generate meaningful data that would make their tests have a longer life, so to speak. Like we had a lot of workflow-based tooling. And if you put garbage in the first step of the workflow, by the time you get out the end, you can't really validate the functionality of the application the way that it would work in the real world. So that was the original use case of Mockaroo. And then I stumbled into the fact that actually the case that probably presents the most value to users is more of the sales engineering, sales demos type cases. That's where it actually really makes money for my customers.
My leaf blowers are gone, so I feel like I can hear everybody again. All right, a question for you, Adam. Mockaroo is free. How about Gin? What's the status there?
Sure. So yeah, Gin is currently free. You can create your account at gin.tonic.ai.
Cool.
Our offering for software engineers, Tonic is not free.
But you can get a 2-week sandbox, so you can try out
Sure.
Tonic.
Yeah, you can certainly try before you buy it.
Yeah. All right. Another question for Mockaroo. What kind of healthcare data sets does Mockaroo work with? Do you work with patient records?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring it up here. Mockaroo.com. So if we go to health, you can see there's actually a category just for that, because I actually came out of the healthcare space. So you might find a little bit more in there than you would for other things. There's all the ICD stuff, which is like procedures and diagnoses, NHS numbers, drug names, drug brands. So there's definitely at least enough to get started there if you're doing any kind of like research data set or some health record data sets. And also, if you've got things, and there's a lot of public health data out there, especially from data.gov, NIH, et cetera. If you know of a data set that you find would be really useful to be able to pull from in Mockaroo and correlate to other data sets, just shoot me a message. There's under the help menu here, contact support, that goes directly to me. And just tell me like what data set would be useful. A lot of the data sets that are in here came from user suggestions, and it's very easy for me to pull them in and make them accessible, so that you and your colleagues and other people in the community can benefit.
I think you got a smiley face response in the chat. Just want to make sure you saw that.
Cool.
All right, another question for Tonic. Tonic supports only structured data, but what about NoSQL document-based data or chemical data types?
Sure. So it depends what products you're talking about. So our products for engineers and for developing, for de-identifying application databases supports NoSQL databases. So you can take, for example, an application Mongo database, de-identify it, have a de-identified Mongo database that you can use for application testing and development. That's no problem. Our Gin offering cannot currently synthesize JSON documents or things of this nature, but you can still use it within Gin, because you can simply flatten out your JSON structure with the appropriate SQL queries, feed that into a model, train, and then unflatten it when you're done via a post-processing step. So in that way, it'll work just fine.
Someone says, I was just about to ask about user suggestions for Mockaroo. Oh, this is in response to what you mentioned earlier, Mark. Mm-hmm. We use this in the education field all the time, and more education-specific data types would go a long way. That's interesting. I know Tonic as well also has uses in education. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, shoot me some ideas. I'm happy to go out and if you give me something that inspires me, go out and find data sets. There's all sorts of ways that I'm familiar with of finding those things, and it's very easy once I find a CSV data set to get them in there. Normally, I just need the domain expertise to know what to look for. So reach out to me, and I'll definitely add something.
Awesome. Adam, have we built anything specific to the education space? Not that I can think of.
I mean, a lot of we don't typically build out specific industry specific data generators, because like typically our tool works by just like inferring what needs to happen based on the seed data. So like, for example, we don't have a generator to generate, grades A to F or something like that, right? Like we can just look at the grade column, infer the values that exist in the column, and generate new grades, kind of appropriately. So like, with that being said, the education technology space is a very popular one for Tonic, our other product that we're not demoing today. Really, any industry that deals with like highly sensitive data, or perhaps it's a regulated industry, is one that we probably have a lot of customers in. Ed tech, finance, healthcare are the three that come to mind first.
Yep. I did see a question come through that I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of as well. Is there going to be a recording? Yes, this session is being recorded, and we'll send out the recording typically by the end of the week. The post-production will be wrapped up, and you can view all of our recordings at any time on our YouTube channel. I'll pull that up and put that in the chat too, so people have that.
Adam, I have a question.
Yes, of course.
Is Gin available as like an on-prem installation, or is it all in cloud-based?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the on-prem is free too, or is that you have to pay a license fee for that?
No, you would pay a license fee for on-prem, but our hosted version at the moment is free. Chiara, I wanted to mention that at the end of the month, we are offering a Gin-only webinar where we are going to basically have a workshop for folks that want to try Gin out for the first time. Folks will come to the webinar. We'll walk you through creating your account. We'll provide everyone with some fun sample data that we're going to all explore together. And then we're going to generate synthetic data based off this data set and then use it for some real world applications. So if anyone here is interested in learning more about Gin and kind of seeing how it works in more detail, and also kind of getting to meet some of the folks that built it, like, our data science team, definitely come to this workshop at the end of the month, and you can learn a lot more. And I think, Chiara, you'll send out a link somewhere.
Yep, there's a link in the chat, and it'll also be included when we send out the recording of this session. We'll include a link there as well.
Yes. I will also say, given that it's a workshop, we're keeping the attendance very limited, so we can have like a lot of like one-on-one time. So sign up now.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks for mentioning that, Adam.
Sure.
All right, I do have a couple more questions for you. Let's see what came through. Questions around, are there any limits around the amount of data that users can generate for both of the platforms?
I'll start with Mockaroo. The free account limits you to 1,000 records per data set, but you can generate as many data sets as you want. And then there are paid accounts. Silver allows you to generate up to 100,000 per data set. Again, as many data sets as you want. And then gold is 10 million. Those are $60 and $600 a year, respectively. And then there's an enterprise, basically Docker container of Mockaroo that you install on-prem, which is significantly more expensive, but it basically has no limit. So as many users as you want, as much data as you want, scales horizontally. Ideal for institutions that either need to generate terabytes of data or have probably 50 or more users of Mockaroo.
That's right. For Gin, there are no limits.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I think we kind of cover most of these. Oh, here's an interesting question. Is there a customer scenario that you'd particularly like to tackle with your platform in the data science space? Any use case that you think would be a great fit for the technology?
Gin is a relatively new product for us. Like, we've been developing our database de-identification tool for 4 or 5 years now, whereas Gin is, maybe 6 months old. Where I think Gin is going to go is, I think it's going to go primarily to data augmentation, just, creating additional records and focus less on privacy. But don't hold me to that. I'm not sure if that's how it's going to play out yet. It's just so early.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's probably a lot of ways I could go with that. I also work a lot in internet networking, and a research group that I work with put out a very interesting paper recently. I'd love to be able to tackle something like this. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Anycast and Anycast routing, but there's this thing called Anycast shakes. Basically, when routers in the internet start changing their routes to other ISPs, it's a predictor of a large scale outage. It's almost like a tremor in an internet earthquake. And it was a thing they found that would allow us to predictively start shedding traffic and moving traffic to more secure areas. So to be able to produce data sets that kind of simulate that stuff, especially longitudinally, is an area where Mockaroo isn't great right now, especially the time series data sets. And that's probably one of the next things I would tackle, because I get a lot of requests for those kind of time correlated events.
That's right. I didn't mention this in the demo today for Gin. Gin handles longitudinal data already. So if you have a longitudinal data set that you would like to synthesize so that you can generate, synthetic sequences. The best example I think is like credit card transactions, right? Like you have a list of millions of people's credit card transactions, but you want to generate, specific sequences of purchases for individuals. That type of longitudinal data is something that Gin supports currently. I should have mentioned.
Yeah.
I normally demo 2 models during the demo, but I wanted to keep it short for everyone today.
Yeah. Mark, did you see the question?
Yeah, if I could share the paper. I have to check and see if I can, or if it's even been published yet. It's an internal group at the company I work for. So I'll see. I don't know. It might be a proprietary thing right now.
Yeah, in case folks don't know, Mark is like a man of so many talents. He's got, he's working for a company, he's leading Mockaroo, he's doing all the things. Very impressive. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you do have more questions, these have all been great. Please do shoot them our way. If not, we're going to wrap things up here because we're coming up on the end of the hour. I think the last question I'd like to ask is, what's the best way to get in touch with either of you for follow-up questions?
For Mockaroo, if you just contact support, I am support. So it comes directly to me. It's the easiest way to do it. I'm also on Twitter at Mockaroo Dev. People reach out to me on there, especially if Mockaroo's down. That's my first warning sign. People will tweet at me and say, hey, what's going on? So yeah, Twitter or contact support.
On my side, I think you could reach out to support at Tonic.ai. I'll certainly see that. You can also, if you go to our website, Tonic.ai, there's various like contact forms in the site. Like if you want to get a Tonic sandbox, if you want to to sign up for a demo from myself or one of our salespeople, those are good ways to reach out to me. Or if you go create your Gin account at gin.tonic.ai, I'm sure I'll reach out to you sometime soon just to say hi.
And we also have a Gin email address that I'll mention as well. I just put it in the chat, great. djinn@tonic.ai.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Well, that was a ton of questions. Really appreciated everybody chiming in. If you do have any more, reach out to us. Like I mentioned, do sign up for that webinar. You can see the link in the chat for that as well, or just sign up to try out Gin. Both ways, you can sign up now and then join the webinar to learn more about it hands-on with the creators, like Adam mentioned. This has been great. I'm going to just put up one more slide of contact info so everybody has it. Let me see if I can do that. Never mind, I can't find oh, there it is. Okay, right over here, just so everybody has all the contact information available. Thanks to everyone for joining, really appreciate it. And thanks as always to our speakers, Mark, Adam, it's such a pleasure always to speak with you both. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you at the next event in the end of the month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.